The kingdom of Zamboro stood as a beacon of prosperity and wisdom, its golden fields stretching far and wide, bordered by thick ancient forests and rolling hills that cradled its many villages. At the heart of the kingdom lay the grand city of Zamboro, a place of bustling marketplaces, towering temples, and a magnificent palace that shone under the sun like a jewel of immeasurable worth. The people of Zamboro were proud and hardworking, their lives deeply rooted in traditions passed down for generations. King Kafule, a ruler known for his wisdom and fairness, had led the kingdom to decades of peace and abundance. His name was spoken with deep reverence, for under his leadership, Zamboro had grown into one of the most powerful realms in the land. The people adored their king, for he was not only just but also kind, ensuring that no family went hungry and that all had a place within the safety of the kingdom's borders. By his side stood Queen Nyara, a woman of unmatched grace and intelligence. She was beloved by the people, not only for her beauty but also for her compassion. She had a heart that understood the struggles of the common folk, and her presence in the palace was like a soothing breeze in the heat of summer. Yet, despite all their riches and blessings, the royal couple carried a sorrow that weighed heavily upon their hearts. For many years the queen had been unable to bear a child, and as the seasons passed, hope seemed to slip away like water through their fingers. The royal priests prayed, the village elders offered their wisdom, and even the most gifted healers in the kingdom tried their remedies, but the gods remained silent. The people of Zamboro, though thriving, longed for an heir who would one day take the throne and continue the legacy of their beloved king. Then, when all seemed lost, a miracle occurred. One fateful night, under the glow of a full moon, Queen Nyara gave birth to a son, a child destined to inherit the throne of Zamboro. The kingdom erupted in celebration, with feasts lasting for days and nights. Drums echoed through the hills, dancers moved like the wind, and storytellers spun tales of the boy's great future. He was named Jumo, meaning blessing, for that is what he truly was. The people rejoiced, offering gifts to the gods and singing praises to their ancestors, for they believed the child's birth was a sign of continued prosperity. But beyond the grand celebrations and joyful hearts, an old tale lingered in hushed whispers, one of caution and fear. The people of Zamboro knew well the power that lay within the depths of Lake Nyamgiri, a vast and mysterious body of water that bordered the western edge of the kingdom. The lake had always been sacred, a place where spirits resided, where prayers were whispered, and where offerings were made to maintain balance between the seen and unseen worlds. It was said that the lake was home to beings far older than any living soul, water spirits of great wisdom, beauty, and danger. Among them were the mermaids, elusive creatures who sometimes emerged from the depths to steal away unsuspecting children. Many dismissed the old legends as mere stories told to frighten disobedient children, but there were those who believed in them deeply. The elders spoke of vanished infants, of eerie songs drifting over the water at night, and of women with shimmering tails who watched from beneath the waves. The mermaids, they warned, were not to be trusted, for while they could be kind, they could also be cruel. And so, even as the people of Zamboro celebrated the birth of their prince, an unease lurked in the background, a silent shadow that not even the warmest fires of festivity could fully dispel. None could know that in the near future the legend of the mermaids would become more than just a tale whispered in the dark. It would become a reality that would shake the kingdom to its very core. Lake Nyamgiri had always been a source of both reverence and fear for the people of Zamboro. It stretched endlessly, its waters dark and shimmering under the sunlight, hiding secrets that no mortal dared to uncover. The villagers whispered of its enchantment, claiming that those who ventured too close would hear voices calling their names, voices as sweet as honey yet filled with an unsettling emptiness. It was said that the spirits of the lake could lure a person into its depths, never to return. Fishermen who cast their nets too far into the water spoke of strange occurrences, their boats suddenly capsizing, their nets being pulled down by unseen hands, and their reflections rippling unnaturally in the water. Elders warned their children never to go near the lake alone, for there were stories of young ones disappearing, taken by the beings who lived beneath the surface. Some believed these were just old folk tales meant to keep children from wandering too far, but others knew better. They had seen things, glimpses of pale hands reaching up from the water, flashes of silvery tails vanishing beneath the waves, and glowing eyes watching from the depths. Despite the fear surrounding Lake Nyamgiri, offerings were still made at its banks. Every full moon, the villagers would place baskets of fruit, honey, and fresh flowers near the water's edge, praying that the spirits remained at peace. It was a fragile balance, one that no one dared to upset. The lake was powerful, and no human could truly understand its will. Within the grand palace of Zamboro, Queen Nyara had long heeded the warnings about the lake. She had grown up listening to the same stories, and though she had never seen a mermaid herself, she knew better than to dismiss the tales completely. But now, as a mother, her fear had grown tenfold. One night, as she lay in her chamber, an unsettling dream took hold of her. She found herself standing at the edge of Lake Nyamgiri, her bare feet sinking into the damp earth. A thick mist rolled over the surface of the water, and from its depths emerged a figure, tall, graceful, and inhumanly beautiful. The woman had flowing hair like woven moonlight, and her lower half shimmered like fish scales beneath the water. In her arms she cradled a child with the same deep brown eyes as Prince Jumo. The queen's heart clenched as she recognized her son, but before she could call out, the mermaid smiled, a haunting, knowing smile, and whispered, "He belongs to the water now." Then with a single motion she sank back into the depths, the child still in her arms. Nyara awoke with a gasp, her skin damp with cold sweat. She clutched her chest, her breathing uneven. It was just a dream, she told herself. But it had felt too real, too vivid. Unable to shake the unease, she turned to King Kafule, who lay beside her, his face calm in sleep. She hesitated before waking him. "My king," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. Kafule groaned softly before blinking up at her, confused. "Nyara? What is it?" Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as she told him of her dream, her voice trembling. She described the mermaid, the lake, and how she had taken their son. "I know it was just a vision," she said, "but I fear it was a warning. We must be careful. We must keep Jumo away from the lake." King Kafule sighed and pulled her into his arms. "My love, you worry too much. It was only a nightmare. Our son is safe and no spirit will take him from us." "But what if?" "No spirit would dare steal a Prince of Zamboro," he interrupted gently. "Rest now. I will not let harm come to our child." Though his words were meant to comfort her, a sliver of doubt remained in the queen's heart. A few days later, the queen's worries were momentarily forgotten as the palace carried on with its daily routine. On that particular morning, the royal nanny Mama Sefu decided to take baby Jumo for a walk outside the palace walls. The air was fresh, the morning sun golden and warm, and she thought it would do the prince good to be in nature. The guards followed at a distance as they always did, ensuring the child's safety. Mama Sefu hummed a lullaby as she carried the baby, his tiny hands grasping at the folds of her robe. She wandered through the royal gardens, past the towering baobab trees, and down toward the outskirts of the palace grounds. Without realizing it, her feet led her closer and closer to the forbidden waters of Lake Nyamgiri. The lake was unusually still that morning, its surface as smooth as polished stone. The air around it felt heavy, thick with something unseen. The guards hesitated as they noticed where she was going, but none spoke. After all, the prince was safe in her arms and nothing seemed out of place. Standing near the water's edge, Mama Sefu adjusted the prince in her arms, rocking him gently. "Just a little fresh air," she murmured. "Nothing to be afraid of." But deep beneath the lake's surface something stirred. Something had been watching. And something, or someone, was waiting. Beneath the shimmering surface of Lake Nyamgiri lay a world unseen by human eyes, a realm of fluid beauty, where light refracted in dazzling patterns and ancient spirits moved like whispers through the water. This was the home of the mermaids, beings of immense power and mystery, creatures neither wholly good nor evil, but bound by the laws of the deep. Among them was Zilani, a mermaid unlike the others, for she carried within her heart a sorrow that had never faded. Zilani had longed for a child for as many years as she could remember. Though she was blessed with eternal youth and enchanting beauty, her heart ached with an emptiness she could never fill. She had watched human mothers cradle their young along the shores of the lake, their soft lullabies carried by the wind. She had seen their joy, their love, and their fierce devotion. And she had envied them. For all her power, for all her magic, she could not bring life into the world. She could not bear a child of her own. One morning, as Zilani drifted near the surface of the water, she heard the faintest sound, a child's laughter, soft and sweet, carried by the gentle breeze. She swam closer, her keen eyes breaking the surface just enough to see what lay beyond. There, at the edge of the lake, stood an elderly woman rocking a small baby in her arms. The child was unlike any she had seen before. His skin glowed like polished bronze, his tiny curls glistened under the sun, and his laughter was like the tinkling of tiny bells. Something within Zilani stirred. She watched as the woman placed the child on a soft woven mat, adjusting his blankets as she hummed a song. But then the strangest thing happened. The woman turned away for a moment, her attention drawn elsewhere. The The child, free from her grasp, wiggled and rolled toward the edge of the lake, giggling as if drawn by an unseen force. Zilani hesitated only for a moment before she acted. To her, the child seemed abandoned, left unattended at the very place where so many others had been cast away, unwanted and forgotten. Was this fate? Had the spirits finally answered her silent prayers? Without another thought, she reached out with delicate hands, scooping the child into her embrace. The moment his small body touched the cool water, he did not cry. He did not resist. He simply blinked up at her with wide, curious eyes. A deep shudder ran through the lake as if the water itself knew what had just occurred. Zilani held the baby close, cradling him as she whispered, "You are mine now, little one. I will love you as no mother ever has." With that, she sank beneath the surface, vanishing into the depths of the lake. Far below, in the sacred chambers of the water spirits, an uneasy murmuring spread among the ancient beings. The spirits of Nyamgiri had existed long before the first human stepped foot on the land, and they had seen the consequences of meddling with fate. Now, a great disturbance rippled through their world and they could not ignore it. Zilani swam through the glowing underwater grottos, her heart light with joy as she carried the child she believed had been meant for her. But before she could reach the safety of her coral sanctuary, the spirits appeared before her, their forms shifting like liquid silver. "Zilani," one of them spoke, its voice deep and ageless, "you have made a grave mistake." The mermaid clutched the baby tighter. "He was alone," she argued. "Unwanted. I have done no wrong in taking him." The spirits swirled around her, their presence growing heavier. "You do not understand. This child is no ordinary boy. He is of royal blood, born of the land, not the water. His fate is tied to the world above, and you have stolen him from it." Zilani's expression darkened. "I do not care where he comes from. I will raise him as my own. He will never know the world above. He will never miss it." The spirits pulsed with a warning energy. "If you keep this child, you will bring misfortune upon yourself and the lake. No good can come from this theft." But Zilani was resolute. She had yearned for too long, suffered too deeply. "I will not give him up." The spirits sighed, their voices echoing like waves crashing against the shore. "Then you have sealed your own fate, Zilani. The water will not protect you forever." And with that, they faded into the currents, leaving the mermaid alone with the child in her arms. Meanwhile, back in the Kingdom of Zamboro, panic and grief spread like wildfire. The moment Mama Sefu realized the baby was missing, she let out a scream that echoed across the fields. The guards rushed forward, their eyes scanning the area, but there was no trace of the prince. The lake remained as still as glass, as if it had swallowed him whole. The palace was thrown into chaos. Servants wept, villagers gathered in distress, and the king and queen were inconsolable. Queen Nyara collapsed onto the palace floor, her wails shaking the very walls of the great hall. "My son," she cried, clutching at her chest. "The spirits have taken my son." King Kafule, usually a man of unwavering strength, stood frozen, his face pale with horror. He called for his warriors, for his priests, for anyone who could retrieve the boy, but the lake offered no answers. The waters, once full of whispered legends, had gone silent. Days passed. Then weeks. The kingdom mourned as if the prince had truly died, for no one believed he would ever return. Without an heir, the future of Zamboro was uncertain. The joy that had once filled the land was now replaced by sorrow. Far below, in the hidden world beneath the waves, Zilani rocked the child in her arms, singing a song as old as the waters themselves. She ignored the warnings, the omens, the heavy silence that surrounded her. She had a son now, and she would never let him go. Deep beneath the surface of Lake Nyamgiri, in a realm untouched by mortal hands, Jumo grew up in a world unlike any other. He knew nothing of the land above, of the golden kingdom that once celebrated his birth, of the grieving parents who still mourned his loss. To him, the endless blue of the lake was home, and the mermaid Zilani was his mother. She raised him with great love and care, protecting him from the dangers of the deep and teaching him the ways of the water spirits. He played among shimmering coral gardens and raced through tunnels of smooth, ancient rock. The lake was alive with creatures both wondrous and strange, glowing fish that flickered like fireflies in the darkness, great serpents that coiled through the depths like moving shadows, and tiny water sprites that danced on the currents. Unlike the other merfolk, Jumo had no shimmering tail. Instead, he glided through the water with the ease of a river otter, his legs strong and agile. At first, Zilani feared that his body would be too weak for this world, that he would struggle to breathe or swim as the others did. But to her surprise, the water embraced him, adapting to him as though he had always belonged. He could stay beneath the surface for longer than any human should, and his movements were as swift and graceful as the creatures around him. He was different, yes, but Zilani convinced herself that it didn't matter. He was hers, and that was all that counted. As the years passed, Jumo flourished under the lake's watchful currents. Zilani taught him how to call upon the smaller creatures, how to listen to the silent whispers of the water, and how to sing the ancient songs that made the currents shift at his command. She filled his mind with tales of the spirits, warning him of the dangers of the world beyond the water. "The land above is a cruel place," she would tell him, stroking his thick curls as they floated around him like black clouds. "The humans are greedy and full of hatred. They do not love as we do." "But Mama," Jumo would ask, his golden brown eyes shining with curiosity, "have you ever been to the land above?" Zilani's grip would tighten slightly. "Once. A long time ago." She would never say more than that. And so, Jumo never questioned it. He had no reason to, until the dreams began. At first, they were nothing more than flashes of color and sound. A golden sky stretching over endless green fields. The distant beat of drums. Voices calling his name, soft yet urgent, filled with a warmth he could not understand. He saw a woman with deep, sorrowful eyes, her hands reaching for him, but every time he tried to grasp them, he would wake up gasping, the cold press of the lake around him once more. The dreams grew stronger with time. He saw faces he did not know, yet somehow recognized. He saw towering stone walls, a grand palace, people bowing before him. He heard the name Jumo spoken with reverence, but something deep inside him whispered that it was more than just a name, it was a title, a destiny. When he finally told Zilani about the dreams, she grew tense, her usually kind face shadowed with fear. "They are just dreams, my love," she assured him, forcing a smile. "Nothing more. But Mama, I see things I have never seen before. I see a woman who cries for me and a man who looks like... Enough." Zilani's voice rang through the water, sharp and commanding. "You are my son, Jumo. The lake is your home. Forget these dreams, they mean nothing." Jumo fell silent, but the doubt had already taken root in his heart. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Zamboro, the years had not been kind. The loss of the prince had cast a long shadow over the land. King Kafule and Queen Yara had never given up hope, but as time passed and no trace of their son was found, despair settled over the kingdom like an unshakable curse. Without an heir, the future of Zamboro was uncertain. The people whispered of doom, of the spirit's wrath, of a kingdom that would crumble without its rightful ruler. Crops began to fail, sickness spread through the villages, and the once thriving trade routes grew quiet. Some believed it was punishment for failing to protect the prince. Others feared the throne would soon fall into the hands of those unworthy of its power. Then one fateful night, an old seer came before the grieving king and queen. She was a woman of many years, her hair as white as the foam on river rapids, her eyes clouded with the wisdom of another world. She stood before the royal court, leaning on her carved staff, and spoke words that sent a hush through the grand hall. "The child is not lost," she declared, her voice as steady as the earth itself. "He lives, but he is no longer of this world." A murmur swept through the court. The queen clutched her chest, her heart pounding. "Where?" King Kafule demanded. "Where is he?" The old woman closed her eyes. "He sleeps beneath the waters, cradled by a mother not his own." Gasps rang out through the chamber. The meaning was clear. The prince had been taken, not by human hands but by the spirits of the lake. The prophecy did not end there. "He will return," the seer continued, her voice like rolling thunder, "but he will not know himself. He will walk the land again only when the waters call him forth, and only when he remembers who he truly is." Hope flickered in the queen's heart, but fear followed close behind. If Jumo was still alive, how would they bring him back? If he had been raised by the water spirits, did he even remember them? And most terrifying of all, if he did return, would he still be the same child they had lost? The kingdom held its breath, waiting for the day when the lake would release its stolen prince. But deep beneath the waves, Jumo remained unaware of the destiny that awaited him, caught between two worlds, one he knew and one that called to him in his dreams. In the heart of Zamboro, hope flickered like a dying flame. Years had passed since the prince's disappearance, and with each cycle of the moon, the kingdom drifted further into despair. But on a night when the sky blazed with 1,000 stars, the great seer, Mother Adana, emerged from her sacred dwelling with news that would shake the land. Wrapped in robes woven with the symbols of time and fate, she entered the grand hall of the palace, her gnarled staff tapping against the polished stone. King Kafuel and Queen Yara sat upon their thrones, their faces etched with years of sorrow. They had all but given up, their prayers unanswered, their son lost to the unknown. The court fell silent as Mother Adana raised her trembling hand. Her eyes, clouded with the wisdom of the unseen, seemed to glow in the dim torchlight. "The prince is not dead," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "He lives, but he has been swallowed by the waters of Nyamgiri. He walks among the spirits of the deep, unaware of the blood that runs through his veins." A gasp rippled through the court. The queen clutched her chest, tears filling her eyes. "Where is he? How do we bring him home?" Mother Adana shook her head. "The mermaids have taken him. He has been raised as one of their own. He does not know you. He does not remember the land." The king's jaw tightened. "Then we must take him back. If he is alive, we will not rest until he is found." He wasted no time. The next day he gathered his strongest warriors, men who had braved the fiercest beasts of the jungle and returned victorious. He summoned the kingdom's most powerful sorcerers, those who could command the wind and speak with the spirits of old. "You will go to the lake," he commanded. "You will demand the return of my son. If the mermaids resist, you will break their spells and bring him home." With their weapons sharpened and their magic ready, the warriors and sorcerers made their way to Lake Nyamgiri. The villagers watched with a mix of hope and fear. They had long avoided the forbidden waters, but now their king defied the spirits themselves to reclaim his child. The warriors stood at the water's edge, their torches blazing, their voices strong as they called out to the merfolk. "Return our prince," they demanded. "You have stolen from the land. Give him back or face our wrath." The lake remained still, the surface smooth as glass. No ripple, no answer. Then, from beneath the water, a deep, melodious hum filled the air. The mermaids had heard the call, but they would not surrender so easily. A thick mist rose from the surface, curling around the warriors, distorting their vision. The sorcerers chanted spells of protection, but the magic of the mermaids was old, older than the kingdom itself. The mist twisted into shapes, forming illusions, phantoms of lost loved ones, visions of treasure buried beneath the waves, whispers of things the warriors longed for most. One by one, the warriors faltered, falling to their knees as the magic seeped into their minds. The strongest among them fought to resist, but even their willpower could not stand against the call of the water. When the mist cleared, they were gone, vanished without a trace. The lake had swallowed them whole. Back in the palace, the news sent a shudder through the kingdom. The people spoke in hushed whispers, their fear growing. If even the strongest warriors could not face the spirits of the lake, who could? But Mother Adana was not finished. She returned to the king, her eyes filled with certainty. "There is one who can find the prince," she said. "One who is not bound by the laws of the land or the water. She walks the line between the two worlds." The king frowned. "Who?" "A huntress," the seer replied. "A girl born with the gift of sight. Her name was Nia. She was no ordinary girl. Raised in the dense forests beyond the kingdom, she had spent her life tracking creatures that no one else could see, listening to whispers carried by the wind. She had the rare ability to glimpse the truth hidden beneath illusions, to see beyond the veil of magic. She was young, no older than 16, but her skills were unmatched. It was said that she could track the flight of a bird in the dead of night, that she could hear the heartbeat of a beast from miles away. More importantly, she had a connection to the spirits that no one else understood. When the king summoned her, she came without hesitation. Clad in leathers woven with the feathers of sacred birds, her braided hair adorned with beads of bone and jade, she knelt before him. "You have been chosen," the king said. "You must find my son and bring him home." Nia did not flinch. "The spirits whisper of his name," she said. "They call to him, but he does not listen. I will find him, but I must go alone." The court murmured in disbelief. "Alone? No warriors? No sorcerers?" The king hesitated. "You are but one girl. The lake has swallowed entire armies. How will you succeed?" Nia's dark eyes gleamed with confidence. "Because I do not seek to fight the mermaids. I seek to see." With nothing but a carved dagger and a pouch of sacred herbs, she set out toward the lake. The path was long, winding through the dense jungle where the air was thick with the scent of earth and rain. She moved swiftly, her feet silent against the undergrowth, her mind focused on the task ahead. As she approached the lake, a chill ran down her spine. The waters were calm, deceptively peaceful, but she knew better. She knelt at the edge of the lake, pressing her palm to the damp earth. Closing her eyes, she whispered a prayer to the spirits of old, calling upon the sight that had been gifted to her. The world around her shifted. In an instant the illusion was lifted, and she saw beyond what mortal eyes could perceive. Beneath the water, hidden in the depths, she glimpsed a world unlike any she had imagined, a city of coral and light, of shadow and song. And at the heart of it she saw him. A boy with golden-brown skin and deep, knowing eyes. A boy who belonged to the land but had been claimed by the water. The prince. Nia opened her eyes, determination hardening her gaze. She had found him. But the hardest part was yet to come. Now she had to bring him back. Jumo swam through the glowing reefs of Lake Nyamgiri, the water cool against his skin, but something inside him felt wrong. He had always known he was different from the others, but until now he had never questioned it. The merfolk glided effortlessly with their shimmering tails, their bodies moving in harmony with the currents. The water was their home, their world, and yet Jumo, though he had lived here all his life, felt like an outsider. He had no tail, no ability to breathe water like they did. Though he could hold his breath for impossibly long periods, he still had to return to the surface when the pressure in his chest became too much. He was faster than most of the lake creatures, but he still relied on his legs, something no other being here possessed. The others never spoke of it, but Jumo had seen the way they looked at him. Some, like the playful water sprites, adored him and treated him as one of their own. But others, especially the older merfolk, regarded him with quiet unease, as if they knew something he did not. He had tried to ignore it for years. Zilani, his mother, had always assured him that he belonged. But lately the feeling had become unbearable, like an itch he could not reach, a whisper he could not quite hear. And the dreams. They came more frequently now, vivid and insistent. Dreams of warm sun on his skin, of rolling green fields, of voices calling his name. Faces of people he had never met but felt he should know. A woman's voice, soft, sorrowful, echoing through his mind, reaching for him, begging him to come home. But home was here, wasn't it? One day as he sat on a coral ledge watching the schools of fish swirl below him, he finally spoke his thoughts aloud. "Mama?" Zilani, who had been weaving a net of glowing seaweed, looked up, smiling. "Yes, my love?" He hesitated. He had never asked before. But now the question burned inside him. "Why am I different?" Zilani's hands stilled. A flicker of something, worry, fear, crossed her face before she quickly masked it with a gentle smile. "What do you mean, little one?" she asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. Jumo frowned. "I have no tail. I cannot breathe as you do. The others, they look at me strangely." He paused, then lowered his voice. "And I dream of things I do not understand." Zilani's grip on the net tightened. "What kind of dreams?" she asked carefully. Jumo sighed, running a hand through his thick, floating curls. "A place I have never seen. A sky so bright it hurts my eyes. People who call my name. And a woman," he swallowed. "She looks like me." A silence stretched between them, heavy and deep. For the first time Zilani could see it, the doubt, the longing, the growing awareness in his eyes. She had known this day would come. She had prayed that it never would. She reached for his hands, pressing them between hers. "Jumo, my love," she said softly, "the water is your home. I am your mother. You must not let these dreams trouble you." "But what if they are more than dreams?" Jumo asked, his voice urgent. "What if they are memories?" Zilani stiffened. The spirits had warned her of this. They had told her that fate was not so easily rewritten. That no matter how much she loved this boy, he was not hers to keep. "Come," she said suddenly, forcing a bright smile. "There is something I want to show you." She pulled him away from the coral ledge, leading him through tunnels of smooth, ancient stone, past glowing caves filled with the treasures of shipwrecks long forgotten. She took him to the great kelp forests, where shimmering fish darted between the towering fronds like fireflies in the night. She showed him the hidden valleys of the deep, where the water glowed with an eerie blue light, where creatures so ancient they had no names roamed the dark. "Is this not a wondrous world?" she asked, spinning through the water. "Is it not beautiful?" Jumo nodded, but his heart was heavy. Yes, it was beautiful. Yes, it was magical. But why did it feel like something was missing? He looked at her, his mother, the woman who had raised him, who had loved him as her own. He wanted to believe her, to stay here in this world forever. But the dreams did not fade. And deep beneath the surface of the lake, the spirits stirred. They had allowed Zilani to keep the child for years, knowing her heart was full of sorrow, knowing she had only ever longed for a child of her own. But fate was not so easily denied. The boy was not meant for the water. One by one the spirits whispered their warning, their voices like the shifting currents. "The time is near. The land calls him. He will not stay forever." Zilani closed her eyes against the voices. She had defied fate for so long. But fate was coming for Jumo whether she was ready or not. Nia moved swiftly through the dense jungle, her keen eyes scanning the shadows between the towering trees. The path to Lake Nyamgiri was not one many dared to take. Legends told of creatures that lurked beyond the veil of the known world, guardians of the lake who did not take kindly to trespassers. But she was not afraid. She had been chosen for this task and she would see it through. As she ventured deeper, the air grew thick with mist, and an eerie silence settled over the forest. The usual calls of birds and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an unnatural stillness. She tightened her grip on the carved dagger at her waist. Something was watching her. Then the shadows moved. A pair of glowing yellow eyes blinked in the underbrush. Then another. And another. Within moments, a half-dozen creatures emerged, massive, feline-like beasts with shimmering black fur that seemed to ripple like water. Their long tails flicked behind them, their sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. The lake's guardians. Nia did not run. Instead, she knelt, lowering her gaze to the earth as a sign of respect. She had heard of these creatures in old stories, spirits in physical form, protectors of the sacred waters. "I do not come to harm," she said, her voice steady. "I seek the lost prince." The largest of the beasts stepped forward, its deep growl vibrating through the ground. It studied her, its piercing gaze searching for lies. The moment stretched into eternity. Then the beast let out a slow exhale and stepped aside. The others followed, parting just enough for her to pass. Nia rose and continued forward. As she neared the lake, the air grew colder. The mist thickened, swirling around her ankles like ghostly fingers. She had been prepared for the journey to be dangerous, but she had not expected the feeling of being watched to be so suffocating. Then the whispering began. It came from the water, from the trees, from the very air itself. Soft, melodic voices, ancient and powerful. "You seek the boy." Nia halted at the water's edge. She could see nothing but the vast, mirror-like surface of the lake. But she knew better than to trust her eyes. "I do," she answered. "I come not to steal, but to return him to where he belongs." Laughter, gentle but filled with knowing. Belonging is a choice. And the boy does not yet know he is lost. Nia's heart tightened. "Then let me speak with him." The voices sighed, like waves lapping against the shore. "You are bold, huntress. But the water does not give up what it claims so easily. The boy is bound by love, by fate, by the mother who raised him. He will not leave unless he chooses to." Nia clenched her fists. She had hoped to break the spell, to shatter whatever magic held Jumo beneath the waves. But it was not magic that bound him, it was his own heart. She took a deep breath. "Then I must make him remember." The whispers grew softer, like a tide retreating. "Find the truth within him. Only then will he see the path home." Nia nodded. She would find a way. Taking one last look at the still, dark waters, she stepped forward. And the lake swallowed her whole. Jumo drifted near the great underwater cavern where the spirits often gathered, their voices weaving through the currents like a song only the water could carry. He had not meant to eavesdrop, but as he swam past the glowing coral wall, he heard something that made his heart stop. "The prince's time here is ending. The land calls to him." "Prince?" Jumo pressed himself against the rock, barely breathing. "Zilani defied the will of fate," another voice whispered. "She stole what was never hers. But no bond, no love, can alter destiny forever." His chest tightened. They were talking about him. His fingers dug into the rock as memories, strange, fragmented, rushed to the surface. The dreams, the visions of a place he had never seen but always felt drawn to. The voices calling his name. The sorrow in Zilani's eyes whenever he asked about his differences. He had always known he was not like the others. But to hear it confirmed, spoken aloud by the very spirits of the lake, felt like a wave crashing into his soul. His heart pounded as he pushed away from the cavern wall and swam toward home, the world around him blurring as he moved faster than he ever had before. Zilani was waiting for him, her silvery hair floating like threads of moonlight in the water. She smiled when she saw him, but something in her expression shifted when she noticed the look in his eyes. "You lied to me," Jumo said, his voice steady but trembling beneath the weight of the truth. Zilani's smile faltered. "Jumo, my love. You stole me." The words came out sharper than he intended, but he did not care. The spirits had spoken. Fate had spoken. He was not meant to be here. Zilani reached for him, but he recoiled. The pain in her face was visible, but he could not let it weaken him. "Not now." "I am not your son," he whispered. "I never was." Tears welled in Zilani's eyes, and for the first time in his life she looked afraid. Jumo, please, she begged. You do not understand. I had no choice. No choice. He let out a bitter laugh. You took me from my real family. You let me grow up believing this was my home, believing I belonged here. You do belong here. Zilani cried, her voice cracking. I love you, Jumo. I have loved you since the moment I saw you. I did what I had to do. No, Jumo shook his head. You did what you wanted, not what was right. The water trembled around them. The spirits were listening. Zilani's face twisted with grief, but there was something else beneath it, desperation. You do not understand what awaits you up there, she said, her voice turning urgent. The land is cruel. They will not love you as I have. They will use you, Jumo. They will see you only as a prince, not as a son. I kept you safe. I gave you a life without pain, without war, without betrayal. Jumo stared at her. But you built it on a lie. The currents swirled violently now, the spirits whispering louder. Fate was closing in. I am going home, Jumo declared. No, Zilani shook her head, her tears falling like shattered pearls. I cannot let you go. And suddenly the water around them darkened. A powerful force surged from Zilani's body, the lake responding to her pain. The currents turned wild, wrapping around Jumo like invisible chains. He struggled, but the water was stronger than he had ever felt before. Stay, Zilani pleaded. Please, my son. I am not your son. Jumo shouted, fighting against the magic that sought to hold him. I will leave. The spirits roared around them, the very fabric of the lake trembling as Zilani's magic clashed with the force of destiny. Then a voice, soft yet commanding, cut through the chaos. Let him go. The spirits parted, and through the darkened waters, Nia appeared. Jumo gasped. He did not know her, yet something about her felt familiar. Zilani turned to face the huntress, her eyes blazing with sorrow and rage. You do not understand. I raised him. He is mine. Nia met her gaze without fear. He was never yours to keep. Zilani let out a cry of anguish, the lake trembling with her pain. The water rose, swirling between them, a final desperate attempt to stop fate itself. But Jumo reached out, pushing through the storm. He reached for the surface, not just of the lake but of the truth, of the life he had lost. And this time nothing could hold him back. The water roared like a living beast, churning and twisting as if it did not want to release Jumo. Zilani's cries echoed through the depths, her magic lashing out in desperate tendrils, trying to pull him back. But fate had made its choice. Nia grasped Jumo's arm tightly, her presence steadying him as the spirits swirled around them, their glowing forms illuminating the darkness. They had waited long for this moment, for the prince to reclaim his rightful place. Go now, the spirits whispered. Destiny cannot be held captive. Jumo kicked hard, his body surging upward. He could feel Zilani's power clawing at him, trying to bind him to the water, but it was weaker now, fading against the force of fate. Jumo. Zilani's voice was raw, filled with heartbreak. Please, don't leave me. For a moment he hesitated. Despite everything, she had raised him, loved him, given him a life. She had been his mother, even if it was built on a lie. But love could not change the truth. I will never forget you, Jumo said, his voice heavy with sorrow. But I have to go. Zilani let out a cry of anguish as he turned away, breaking free from the last of her magic. The moment he breached the surface, the world exploded with color. The sun, bright, golden, blinding, bathed the land in warmth. The sky stretched endlessly above him, vast and unfamiliar. For the first time, Jumo felt air rush into his lungs, filling them with something new and exhilarating. He gasped, coughing as Nia pulled him onto the shore. His limbs felt heavier now, no longer buoyant in the water, but the earth beneath him was solid and real. He was home. A gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. The villagers, warriors, and nobles who had come to witness the prophecy unfold stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Then a sob, choked and filled with years of grief, broke through the silence. Jumo. He turned and his heart clenched. A woman stood at the front of the crowd, her regal robes flowing in the breeze. Her face, so familiar yet unfamiliar, was streaked with tears. Beside her, a tall man, his powerful frame trembling, stared at him as if afraid to believe what he was seeing. King Kaful. Queen Yara. His parents. Jumo took a step forward, then another. His mother let out a broken cry and ran to him, her arms wrapping around him so tightly he thought he might never breathe again. But he didn't care. He felt her warmth, her heartbeat, the love that had been lost to him for so long. My son, she wept, holding his face between her hands. You've come back to me. His father stepped forward, his strong hands resting on Jumo's shoulders. He did not speak at first, his emotions too great. Then, in a voice thick with unspoken pain, he whispered, "We never stopped searching for you." Jumo felt his throat tighten. I never knew, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But it didn't matter now. He was home. The silence was shattered by a sudden, thunderous cheer. The prince has returned. The kingdom erupted in celebration. Drums pounded through the air, people danced, voices lifted in joyous song. After years of mourning, the kingdom of Zamboro had their heir once more. And as Jumo stood surrounded by his people, feeling the solid earth beneath his feet, he knew, truly knew, where he belonged. Zilani floated in the darkened waters of Lake Nyamgiri, her heart aching in a way she had never known before. The waves were restless, disturbed by the absence of the boy she had once called her son. She watched from the shallows as the kingdom above celebrated his return, the air filled with joyous cries, drums and songs of victory. Jumo was gone. The spirits surrounded her now, their luminous forms flickering like underwater stars. Their voices carried the weight of the ages, filled with sorrow and finality. You defied fate, Zilani, they murmured. You took what was never yours and now you must face the consequences. She clenched her fists, her silver hair floating around her like a ghostly veil. I loved him, she whispered. I gave him everything. But you built your love on deception, the spirits replied. You stole him from the life he was meant to have. And now your debt must be paid. Tears welled in Zilani's eyes as she felt the weight of their judgment settle upon her. The lake, once her home, now felt like a prison. The magic that had once connected her to Jumo, the invisible thread that had bound them as mother and son, was unraveling. Then the spirits spoke their final decree. You will never see him again. The word struck her like a dagger to the heart. She gasped as a strange force spread through her body, wrapping around her like unseen chains. The magic she had wielded for so long, the power that had allowed her to watch over him, to reach out to him through the water, was fading. She turned toward the shore, panic rising. Jumo was standing beside his mother and father, his back now turned to the lake. He did not look back. She wanted to call out to him, to beg for one last glance, one last moment. But the spirit's punishment was absolute. The barrier between them was sealed. A choked sob escaped her lips. The water around her trembled, reflecting the sorrow that consumed her soul. She had taken him to fill the emptiness within her, believing that love alone could rewrite destiny. But love, when built on selfishness, could never be enough. She had lost him. Forever. The lake grew silent, the spirits retreating into the depths. The celebration on land faded into the distance. And Zilani, the mermaid who had once dared to steal a prince, wept alone in the waters that had once been her refuge, now her eternal sorrow. Years passed, and the kingdom of Zamboro flourished under the wisdom of King Kafule and Queen Nyara. But as time moved forward, so did destiny. The day finally arrived when Prince Jumo would take his rightful place as king. The grand palace was adorned with golden banners, and the people of Zamboro gathered from every corner of the land to witness the momentous occasion. Drums echoed through the valley and songs of joy filled the air. The elders, the warriors, and the villagers stood together in unity, awaiting the crowning of the lost prince who had returned to them. Jumo knelt before the royal priest, his heart heavy with the weight of his journey. He had grown into a strong and just leader, shaped not only by the love of his real parents but also by the lessons of the mermaid who had once raised him. Though Zilani had stolen him, she had also loved him. She had given him kindness, and he could not erase the part of himself that belonged to the water. As the priest placed the sacred crown upon his head, the people erupted into cheers. King Jumo had ascended the throne. But his first decree was one that no ruler before him had ever dared to make. Standing before his people, Jumo raised a hand for silence. For too long, the land and the water have been divided by fear and misunderstanding, he declared. But I have lived in both worlds. I have seen the kindness of the spirits beneath the waves. And I know now that we do not have to be enemies. Murmurs spread through the crowd, but the people listened. Jumo continued, From this day forward, a new law shall stand, one of peace between the people of Zamboro and the water spirits of Lake Nyamgiri. No more shall we live in fear of one another. Instead, we will honor both the land and the sea. The villagers bowed their heads in respect, accepting the decree of their new king. The elders nodded in approval, for they knew that destiny had chosen Jumo not only to lead but to unite. Though Zilani could never see him again, Jumo carried her memory in his heart. And as he stood before his people, his mother and father by his side, he knew that his journey had come full circle. He was no longer just the boy of the lake or the lost prince of Zamboro. He was a king. And a new era of peace had begun. The story of Jumo, the lost prince of Zamboro, is one that would be told for generations, a tale of destiny, love, and the delicate balance between choice and fate. His journey from being stolen by a mermaid to reclaiming his rightful place as king carried lessons that resonated deeply with all who heard it. At its heart, the tale teaches that destiny cannot be stolen or altered, no matter how strong love may be. Zilani, the mermaid, took Jumo out of longing for a child, believing that love alone would be enough to make him hers. But love, when taken instead of given freely, comes with consequences. Her sorrowful fate serves as a reminder that no one can keep what was never meant for them. Yet the story also speaks of compassion and understanding. Despite the pain of his past, Jumo chose not to let bitterness rule his heart. He honored the mermaid who had raised him, even as he embraced his true identity. His ability to see beyond vengeance and forge peace between humans and spirits is what made him a great ruler. In time, King Jumo became a legend. The Kingdom of Zamboro thrived under his reign, known far and wide for its wisdom and fairness. The new bond between the land and water brought harmony, and the fear that had once surrounded Lake Nyamgiri faded into history. No longer did people whisper about cursed waters or stolen children. Instead, they spoke of the king who had walked between two worlds and brought them together. Elders would sit by the fires at night, telling children the tale of the mermaid who took the prince, the huntress who found him, and the king who chose peace. And as the stars twinkled above them, those who listened would understand. Destiny cannot be denied, love must be given freely, and true wisdom lies in knowing when to let go. And so, Jumo's name was forever etched in African folklore, a tale not just of loss and redemption, but of the unbreakable bond between the past, the present, and the future.